Meta Perspective Podcast.
Hello, and welcome back to Meta Perspective Podcast. We're your hosts, Alex.
Evan.
And the girl. Today, on Meta Perspective Podcast, we're going to be talking about a controversial topic, God, the one who made us. And just kind of an overall simplification of what is this kind of entity that kind of obviously has been around for a little while, that we all kind of govern by or don't govern by.
Yeah.
But before we get into that, this show has been going on for a while now, a few years. We have a open chat ready for you to talk. We have an open call line, as you can see on the bottom. So don't forget to call in. You get some money.
Yeah, so we got a subscriber giveaway going on right now, trying to grow the YouTube channel. So if you are watching and you give the channel a sub, send us a email to parodyworldproductions@gmail.com with a screenshot of your subscription, and we'll send you a $5 Amazon gift card.
It's free money.
Free money.
You don't have to do anything, really.
Free money, baby.
It's free money.
But yeah, we also have a call line, as you can see on the number on your screen. If you give that a call, it'll be totally anonymous. You can talk to us. And of course, we have the chat up there too. We can see what you say. Because Meta Perspective Podcast isn't meta without your perspective.
Yes, sir.
So yeah, we'll jump right in, I guess.
Might as well.
So I mean, if you've seen the show before, me and Alex like to talk about spiritual concepts a lot of the times. Tonight we're going to be focusing specifically kind of on religion and the idea of spirituality and really the idea of God. And I think I think the word God kind of conjures up an image for people.
Almost a negative connotation a lot of times.
Which is weird. I mean,
It is.
It's weird how you hear the word God and you almost like think a negative thought. That's not the
Like,
objective.
something that made all this. This guy again. Yeah.
So I mean, yeah, it's religion's kind of caught some flack over the past couple years and decades maybe.
A while.
But yeah, it's and in ever evolving world of technology and science, people are kind of starting to question the idea of religion, and we're not here to tell you tonight to believe anything that we're saying
Or not.
It's really just the concepts and the core understanding of, is there a higher power outside of ourselves? And is it good to believe in the existence of something like that or not? Does it hurt you to believe in it? I don't know. I don't know if the answer would be yes.
Or no.
And also we're not here to, put one religion over the other. This is not a discussion of what religion's best. This is really a discussion of, what it means.
What is the overall point of religion? Like, if you're atheist and you don't believe in a religion, for example, what would be the benefit of a religion, and what would be the negative outcomes that you think? This is the idea of Meta Perspective. Is jump in the chat and tell us why you think religion might not be helpful, or why you think it is good. Do you think it'll help in other aspects of your life where typically religion isn't applied, but following a religion would make you better in that category? Do you think that religion and following that as a whole is going to hold you back? We're all about trying to get to the bottom of this and kind of what your views are on this to create a more well-rounded understanding. So if you want to start it off.
Well, I mean, so I'm an introspective guy.
Cobra Kai, strike first.
And definitely had some spiritual thoughts going on in my head early on. Obviously, I was raised in a Christian household. We went to church when I was a kid. I didn't like it. It was just,
Christian or Catholic?
Protestant Christian, not Catholic.
Did you kneel a lot? Did you kneel in the pews?
No kneeling on the pews.
That's how I ask people. Like, did you kneel in church? They're like, yeah, that's Catholic. My church, you don't get on your knees.
You have to put, the pews like a half foot more space.
Yeah, my church, when some guy says get on your knees, you don't do it. That's the major difference there. But again, we're not saying any religion is better than the other. It's just, if a guy tells you get on your knees, you just don't do it, in my opinion.
Well, I mean, like this country was, founded on the ideals of the existence of a God. And that's, really that speaks to kind of a morality outside of what humans have deemed, acceptable. It's things that we all understand. I mean, this is
like an overall moral compass for everyone to follow.
Yeah. I mean, this is like primitive Hammurabi's code stuff. It's obvious. Don't steal, don't murder. Humans have known this for a long time. But, where it comes into play is what's really the purpose of a religion. And the way that I see that is that there is basically two purposes. If you break it down in the fundamentals, it's how an individual should act and the rules that an individual should follow to have a better life, and then how society should act and how society should follow to be better. And one's inward, one's outward. And I think that that's kind of an important distinction because, regardless of what you believe, the person next to you might believe something that helps their life. And that's, that's an important thing. You want to, you want to understand that other people out there may not believe the same things you do. And that doesn't necessarily matter as long as we're all kind of in the same understanding of these moral foundations. And there's debatable aspects to each, to what those foundations necessarily are, but we all kind of agree that, we know the difference between right and wrong, and we don't need the Bible to necessarily tell us that. Taking it a step further, there's a difference between just having a moral lifestyle and being a spiritual person. And what that means now in our modern world is kind of a hodgepodge now. To be spiritual or to say that you're a spiritual person doesn't necessarily put you into one religion. It's this kind of new emerging belief that there is a spirituality to our existence. And whether you agree that we have a spirit or not, there's something else outside of ourselves. We're not just meaningless atoms floating around in infinite space-time. So that's kind of like the foundation of where we are now. But, throughout this episode, we will make the argument why it is important to acknowledge the existence of something. And that word could be called God.
And to kind of, I guess, start it off from there, the way I see it is everybody has their own, without any type of foundation or structure or religion or whatever it is that you base, even if it's just your experiences, right? These are like, I went through this, I know how the world is, It's obviously right and wrong is going to be different from the perspective of an atheist, who went to Nam versus an atheist who went to some university for gender studies. There's going to be a big gap. What I believe the importance of religion, more specifically like something like Christianity, not so much a uniform religion, more so like a relationship with the idea of the Creator, a relationship with God, not so much just rituals for God. Like I do this every night. I pray every night. I go to church every week. Instead of that, it's more of like actually communicating.
Eat the bread, drink the grape juice.
Exactly. Yeah. Well, we get real wine. I don't know what church you go to, but that's the idea. Is you don't.
You? I must be getting good donations.
We get the good stuff.
Honestly, some juice might be more expensive than
It's white wine though. Is that weird?
that.
No, I'm
is weird.
kidding,
It's
I'm
not
kidding.
the color.
But to me, that's one of the important aspects of following some type of structure. Is like Christianity, for example, is obviously 2024 years old, but the lessons are as true as ever. When it says don't steal, it's like as a whole, just don't steal. It says don't murder. It doesn't say don't kill. You know, in the sense that if like I'm sitting there and you're like, hey, I broke into your house and I'm gonna kill you, very clearly says, most religions say, like, yeah, you don't want to go out and kill. Don't do that. But if somebody's trying to kill you, you will defend your life. And if that means taking another, so be it. But try not to. But like, if you have no choice, defend your life. You do not give your life to somebody because they say they want to take it. And it's the same idea as like, I think when it comes into that area that a lot of people look at as gray, they don't see the reasoning. Like obviously, if I'm created by a creator and the creator made me, and somebody goes rogue and they're like, I'm going to kill the creations can stand up and take out the enemy that's trying to take them out. But the creations as a whole should never murder, should never kill. It should just not happen unless it is something that you have to do. Obviously, something like the Crusades and stuff like that, where people following another person. They're not following the word. If you look at the word, it's very structured. It says, don't do what you guys did. You screwed up. Like, don't use that as an example for why this stuff doesn't work, because it is immoral. But if you look at the book as a whole, like you were saying, everybody kind of has different a different understanding because of their experiences for what is morally right and wrong. So, like you said, the point of a lot of religions is here's what's right and wrong through you as an individual, and right and wrong as a social group. So I would compare it as like, if I told you, hey, I got that thing you need, to anybody, anything that you need, fill the blank. I got that thing you need.
You're the guy.
Yeah, I got the thing you need. I got that, what you need. I got that thing. So if you want it, you can either take this way, or this way. You can get in your car, you can walk, or let's say you could fly. Now, let's say I morally, I say, well, flying and walking, or flying and driving, or let's say immoral. Through my definition, you have to walk. Now, the idea being that you're not going to try to find another way. You're going to walk. You're going to say, well, this is my only way. I'll walk to get to what I need to get to. Now, if I take that away and I say you can do either of these three, and I'm not going to say driving or flying is wrong. Depending on what you think is right or wrong, or what you justify, you may pick another lane. And to me, that's kind of the idea of religion, is to say, for example, stealing is wrong. So a kid says, well, what if my family is starving and I have no choice but to steal to get them the food? Right? How is that morally wrong? Well, I would argue if you follow a structure and the idea of stealing in your mind is understood as wrong and not an option, you're not saying, should I drive, fly, or should I walk there? You're saying, well, these aren't options. I need to put all of my mental resources into how can I get food that doesn't take a cheat code. And to me, that's the point of a lot of religions, is to say, there is always a way. You just have to understand and believe there's a way and it will be delivered. It's the moment you say, well, there might be another way. Well, then you've already kind of separated yourself from the route you probably need to take to keep your integrity, to keep your moral structure within yourself. Because the moment you make a decision that even you deem as like, well, this isn't right, but I'm doing it for good reasons. Well, you've just justified doing something wrong. So what's to stop you from doing it again? Well, your family's hungry next week. They went 4 weeks without food, and then finally you stole. Now maybe you just go a week without food, and then you steal. Maybe you get to the point where you're like, well, we need to eat, so I'm just going to steal every night. And it gets to a point where even when food is available and you could go out and you could hunt because the animals are back, because something happened, the animals were gone, now they're back. You could hunt. But instead of going through the work of hunting for your food, the food's right there, I'm going to steal it. And that's the idea, is it creates a gray area that allows you to break away from the right or wrong. It allows you to start to hurt other people. I believe these boundaries in religion are set to protect us and to protect others. Like you said, there's a moral structure for yourself and a moral structure for society. And the moment I change my moral structure for myself, I may still expect society to uphold theirs, but realistically, it's like I've already deviated.
You can't count on that.
Yeah, I've already deviated. I've already started to affect the guy whose business I stole from, I'm still stealing from. And now that person may become morally corrupt, where they go, you know what? I know it's wrong to kill people, but he's stealing from me. And now after this 5th week in a row, because he's normalizing it, it's been, let's say now it's to the point where it's 5 days in a row he's been stealing. I'm not making money. I'm losing money. Now I can't feed my family because if I give them the food I'm making, I won't have money to pay for my place, and we could lose our place. So I have to kill the person who's doing this. I have to poison the food because I don't know when they come here. So I'll poison the food. So when they go back, it just kills them. Not knowing, now it kills the whole family. Now it killed this person in the family, and now this person's after me. It creates problems. I believe the point of religion is to create a foundation to say, this is wrong, find another way. And when you morally do not accept stealing as an option, I believe your mind is forced into an area where you will find another way somehow.
Yeah.
You know, instead of waiting till the last minute and being like, well, stealing's always an option, but I'll keep looking. And you keep looking, but you're not looking like you would if stealing wasn't an option. If stealing wasn't an option, if food wasn't there, you would have to find it. But if you know this place has food next door, well, I wouldn't steal unless it got to the point where I couldn't find the food.
Yeah.
Well, what if you would never steal no matter what? Even if that place was there? Well, then it's not about if I can't find the food. It's, I have a week before we're really hurting. So today's the day. I have to make sure we get food. And maybe it takes me a week, but when I find the food, I still have it on the same day I would have stole it. I just didn't let time run out before I made a bad decision, knowing that bad decision was there as a fallback.
And I want to address one of the things that you said. And actually, before I do that, I want to add a third purpose of a religion. Okay. I skipped over this because the context of what we're talking about, this is more about reality and how you conduct yourself and how society conducts itself. I mean, those are the two things. It's religions for the individual to behave and how to conduct yourself that will be beneficial to you psychologically, spiritually, morally, emotionally, you know, relationships, everything like that. And then there's the society. You know, you want society to behave well together. You want people to do things for others, because that is, once you've kind of solidified your inward disposition, then it overflows to the outside, and that's kind of the idea. But I want to acknowledge at least the third that I didn't talk about was that religion's purpose is to talk about the afterlife and kind of guide you. It's kind of the reason why you should be good in this life is because there's the promise of the afterlife, or there's some type of explanation for what happens to you after we die.
I mean, a lot of religions, not just Christianity,
right?
But a lot of religions do say that there is something afterwards.
Right.
You know, there's this first dimension, second dimension, third dimension. It's like, hey, just in case something else is out there, focus on your afterlife. Focus on things outside of just this moment, just the now. But try to figure out what decisions you're making in the now, because your goal should be the after.
I mean, and there's some cynical things to that too. It's like, I hate to use the example of the kind of a jihad mentality where it's like, if you die in a way that, it'll
No.
YouTube,
I
YouTube. I can't. I gotta be careful here.
but I totally see what you're saying. The
So
idea
doing
of
something immoral for the afterlife, that's not necessarily the right. That doesn't help society.
and I would argue or not argue, but I would back that up with when you look at most religions, what they're trying to convey is that there is a structure to how the psychological mind works. And when you look at plants and animals and the fact that a cow eats these perfect plants to create
It's a harmony.
to create everything, and then it farts, which creates the greenhouse gases that help. When you see that everything works together, there's clearly an order. When you see that there's a structure in your mind, when you start to see that structure, you realize there's an order, and that order is what you try to build yourself on. So I see what you're saying as far as like some people can say, well, I'm doing this because I believe that it's right, and I believe that if I do this, the afterlife is I'll get the best of the afterlife because I'm doing this for what I was told was right. But I would back that up with everything. If you really look at everything and analyze it, you'll notice there is a structure. So if you do not fit into the structure, it doesn't matter what you tell yourself. It's the fact that the idea, in my opinion, simply put, with any type of afterlife and any type of religion, would be if you do not have a perfect structure to where you help people and you're unaffected by people who try to hurt you. If you allow yourself to be hurt by others and then lash out and hurt back, you're not there yet. And for that reason, it should be simply put that if you pass on, you're not passing on with what would be a perfect structure. If there is a good and a bad, if there is a positive, negative, an up and a down, if everything seems to have two sides, it would make sense that in the afterlife, there would be another kind of like, do you float up or do you drop down? Like, what is the weight and what does that weight mean? So do you want to create this perfect thing that just kind of levitates and it's like nothing can affect me, but I just radiate everything to everybody else and you just float? Or you can sink and be like, I take from everybody and I lash out at anybody who doesn't give. If you give me something negative, I'm going to negative back. But I'm also not going to give anything good naturally.
Right,
I'm going to try to take any chance I get.
If everything you did in this life, I mean, this is like outside of like the St. Peter's judging you at the gate and with his list of everything you've done wrong. If you just think about it from a realistic standpoint and everything that you did throughout your life, that vibration was sent out to the tips of the universe, hit whatever infinity wall exists out there, and came back and consolidated into an equilibrium. Would you manifest that afterlife? If you manifested that afterlife, would it be good or would it be bad based on what you put out in your material existence on this plane? So, I mean, that is something to contemplate. And I do want to get into that more. But I want to go back to one of the things that you said about, doing things in this life, and we've addressed that everybody has kind of a moral compass. We all understand that you shouldn't do, shouldn't kill, shouldn't steal, all these 10 Commandment, Hammurabi's code type of things that we all get. You don't need religion to understand that, but to get to kind of the deeper meaning of some of that, it's really has to do with consequences, and it's not necessarily, it's almost like latent consequences. It's not something that's immediate action response kind of thing. So like even if you do something wrong, maybe you're not, like the example of the person that's stealing to live, right? Like that, most people would be understanding of that, because there are people that live in excess and people that live in poverty that need food. Yeah, okay. Distribution, it's an easy concept to understand. If I need food or I'll die, I'm going to steal from the person that has it. But what you were saying was that mentality, doing that sin,
opens a door.
It opens the door for you to do it more and to take more, and like, oh, well, nothing happened. There was no consequences, so might as well keep stealing.
And just but real quick, just like you said, it's like morally, that person who's getting stolen from understands, I see this guy stealing. I see what he's wearing. I watched him. I was sitting in the window and I watched him run up. I could tell this guy really needed the food, so I let it happen. And then 2 weeks later, he did it again. And then he did it the next week. But after that 5th day in a row, because it's become normalized, now it's no longer I feel bad for you. Now you're hurting me. You're stealing from me. You've been taking more than you need. And it gets to a point where the normalization of like, well, I can get the food because I need it. And then it gets to a point where, well, it's easy to get it. Nobody's guarding it. You know what? Why shouldn't I just go get it? If that guy didn't want me to take it, he would have locked it up, you know?
Right.
And it becomes a thing where, like you said, like that gray area just gets expanded into a dark.
Yes, that's
into a
where
black.
that's where the morality breaks down on the individual level and on the society level, because those consequences, while maybe the 5th time that you steal, you get arrested or something, you know, that's the physical consequence, but the latent consequence of the first time that you steal and you commit that sin, it is essentially it's corrupting you, and that is, you know, if you're trying to guide yourself in a moral, virtuous way, you know, those little things will corrupt you over time, and that's kind of one of the kind of, not downfalls, but one of the problems that I have with the idea of Christianity is essentially that it's the whole sacrificial lamb thing. Jesus died on the cross, so your sins are forgiven. Well, that doesn't mean that you can just sin and then know you're forgiven in the afterlife.
Oh, no.
Right? So that gets to the afterlife part. Oh, I can just do what I want. As long as I believe in God, I'll still have eternal salvation or whatever. But what you're not realizing in that train of thought is that those little things that add up or that manifest over time, that is causing the real latent consequence is to yourself.
Yes.
And is that's where those type of mentalities, instead of building yourself up to be a virtuous person that helps other people, and you know that's kind of like where you'd want to be.
You've reframed your own mind on how you view yourself.
Right. And it starts to break down that morality, and it starts to, I mean, even on a society level, we see this, but you know, realistically, that leads to a path that ultimately hurts you.
Yes.
While you may need the food, while you may need to eat, and that's an understandable thing, it opens the door for our human nature to take over, take into effect, and then next thing you know, your life will start to unravel by the threads. It's not going to be, you know, by the rope's not going to snap right away. It's going to be a general unraveling of everything that you hold, you know, morally.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And to
Right.
kind of go off of that, I will say that's kind of one of the things that I think is a big misconception with Christianity, is the idea that if you believe in God and you're like, God, you know, you ask God, you know, forgive me for my sins, and you can keep sinning and go back to God. That's not Christianity. What Christianity is saying that you ask for forgiveness. Now, what that means is not, God, hey, can you forgive me for this? Thanks. Asking for forgiveness is a spiritual experience. You wouldn't ask for forgiveness unless you felt bad. So if I'm that guy and I'm stealing from these people, at some point, let's say my family's fed. Let's say my family's fed. The idea of asking for forgiveness and getting back to yourself after going through that gray area, I'm about to cross into a real dark place if I keep doing this. But let's say I realize that what I'm doing is wrong, and I realize I've led myself astray morally. I've gone against what you know, let's say uniform religion, for example, says is wrong, or says is right, and I've led myself into a pretty dark gray area, and I'm starting to look at myself as I might be wrong. I might be a bad person. And then I realize what I'm doing is 100% wrong. And I realized the reason I feel that is because the last time I stole, I couldn't justify. So as this guy steals over and over, now you're in this place where you're like, well, the last time I stole, was just to have, so they had food, but we still had a little bit left over. We went 3 weeks without food. Why did I feel like I had to steal when we had a little bit of food left after 3 days? Because I didn't want to get to a place where we needed it. And that's what happens is
that temptation.
But that's the idea
that religion talks about.
But that's the idea
that's
of the forgiveness is you don't say, forgive me, and then you keep doing it. What you say is, I recognize what I'm doing is wrong, and I can't get rid of this feeling that what I did was wrong. Now, that's the idea, in my opinion, of what is following Christianity or some religion is if you truly believe the moral structure that is displayed, if you fully absorb that equation and say, this is the moral structure for my mind and this is how my mind has to work. If you believe that, now, Christianity also says that you're going to sin, you're going to make mistakes. It's not about being perfect, it's about always improving towards God. So the idea of that would be, even though I stole and I needed it, now I can acknowledge, now that I don't need the food, I can acknowledge that what I did was wrong. So step one is me going to God or me searching in myself and saying, hey, what I did was wrong. I'm asking for forgiveness because I feel like I need it, because I can't get rid of this feeling that says I'm bad. And I don't want to keep going that direction. This feeling that says I'm bad is going to lead me to becoming bad. I've already stolen. I'm starting to feel like I'm that guy who steals, and I don't want to. I want to reject this, but I've already done it. How do I forgive myself for doing something that I believe is wrong? And that's the idea of forgiveness. That's the idea of Jesus, is you make that connection and you say, I'm sorry. I understand. I fully understand what I did was wrong. I'm sorry. And that's when, from my experience, that's when you will feel judgment. You will feel God's judgment.
Yeah.
And that's when you're forgiven. God will go through your mind, and suddenly that thing you're saying you don't like will hurt 10 times more. You will understand the consequences of what you did, not just to yourself, but to the other person. And like you said, the consequences yourself. I believe a sin is an acronym, essentially more or less saying it's a self-inflicted negativity. It's something you're doing that ultimately hurts you. You might be hurting other people sinning, but ultimately it's hurting you and leading you away from what you're going to get out of a return. Every religion says you get what you put in. You get what you put in. So if you're giving into this darkness, then what you're going to get is more darkness.
Right.
And I think all of us know at least one person whose life is falling and spiraling out of control. And when they sit there and they start venting to you about how horrible things are, in the back of your head, we all have that one person where in the back of your head you listen, you go, kind of sounds like you're doing this all to yourself. Like you could easily, this whole story you told me, you could have easily avoided by not talking to that person and starting shit. And then when they said something mean back after you started it, you made it worse. Like, you don't see that you're trying to make your situations worse because you've crossed so many gray areas. But if you have the foundation, you would see, whoa, I have led far away from what is my standard for myself. And that's when you ask for forgiveness. And then you feel that weight of what you did, you see what you've done, and you go back to where you are because you retreat from all these influences over you. To me, that is the idea of what forgiveness actually is. It's not saying it's that I was raised Catholic and went atheist because of it. I'm telling you, going to a priest and saying, hey, I stole from a store. And they're like, all right, say these prayers and you're forgiven. You're like, I don't feel bad for it. I just feel like I should say it because my parents told me to.
It's like the mob boss. It's like, they're like, oh,
I killed a man.
I killed 3 people this week and
killed his mother right in front of him.
I want to, confess my sins, ask for forgiveness. That sounds
say
like
52 Hail Marys, and you're like, I got it. And then all of a sudden, you're forgiven. No,
Tony,
forgiveness. Exactly, but forgiveness comes from an acknowledgement within yourself that it's wrong. And forgiveness comes with that. Forgiveness comes saying, not only do I acknowledge this is wrong, I'm recalibrating myself to say, I know it's right. And that's the point of religion, is to say, this is a moral standard. And I'm looking at what the standard is. I'm seeing where I am now. I don't like this. I'm begging, please, something within me change. So, because I don't want this. But if you don't go outside of yourself to try to recalibrate, I believe at least most people are going to continue to justify certain aspects of that.
And okay, so you talked about forgiveness, and this is going to tie it in here. I feel like the word forgiveness and the concept has been, it's taken a...
Well, nowadays, all words have kind of been redefined. Forgiveness in itself, as the definition, is truly like accepting the situation and giving grace and understanding. Like if I'm being forgiven, I see what you're saying as far as like a lot of people look at it as like, well, it's forgiveness.
Well,
it's this idea of this thing forgiving you. But the real thing is you feeling forgiven. Like you said, the mob bosses, you can't kill somebody and say, hey, Father, you forgive me? He's like, say 52 Hail Marys. And you're like, all right, I'm better. By the way, you take care of that rat, Tony? Like, no, you have to understand that you can't kill Tony, and you have to feel bad for the other guys you're telling him you killed. You don't just say prayers and God forgives you. It's about a relationship with God and saying, I feel God in me. I've let myself go astray. The idea of the sheep, God came back to me and made me, and I felt God. And I realized when I felt him, whoa, I'm really far from who I was. I need to ask forgiveness, and I need to acknowledge what I did. And after acknowledging that stuff, then I get the forgiveness. And once I get the forgiveness, I feel kind of recalibrated, and I'm back to square one of, I can't do this. So next time a situation comes up and it's like, hey, your family's hungry again, you go, that's not an option this time. I remember what happened last time. I learned from my mistake. I had to ask for forgiveness because I let myself go in the gray area. So now instead, that's not an option. I'm not even going to think about it. I'm going to let my mind be, knowing that that's never an option. I'm going to let my mind come up with something else. And maybe I end up finding some type of root. I dig it up. This is olden days. I start boiling it. I make a certain soup. And now everybody buys my soup. I have my own little shop. Right. Now my family's making money. We're doing well. Instead of going down the dark path, I stayed on the narrow. Instead of taking the plane or the car, I decided to walk. And even though it took longer, I got something out of it.
Yeah, and I mean, you're right. I mean, like any decision, you open up a quantum fork of
exactly
good or bad, and you don't know where that's going to lead. Like the butterfly effect of you doing good in that situation, even though your family was starving. You're right. Maybe you find out how to make something and sell it, and then your family's doing great a year later. Versus if you go the bad route, you keep stealing, you get caught. Now your family can't depend on you to get more food, and then they spiral, and it goes from there. So to the word forgiveness, as I was kind of saying, it's really, I believe that the word forgiveness and the concept has been
diluted.
Well, it's misunderstood.
Reframed.
So it seems like when someone does something bad to you, you forgive them. You're basically saying that, I acknowledge whatever you did bad to me, that's okay. I'm all right. But really the concept of forgiveness is not an outward thing. It's an inward thing.
Yes.
It's saying that, I mean, you used an example earlier of somebody who, wronged you. And instead of saying like, I understand that you wronged me and I forgive your actions for wronging me, and it's okay. Everything's okay. What forgiveness really means to yourself, because it doesn't, for you to forgive someone else, it doesn't really help you. You're just telling the person that it's okay, whatever they did.
Yeah.
So it's not
exactly.
the forgiveness is really about
It's a spiritual thing. It's not
letting
something to say.
letting go of the animosity or the reaction or whatever happened to you that you were wronged for. You're saying that I choose to not be affected by this. This is not going to affect my life. This is not going to make me respond or do anything rash. My mood and my disposition is not going to be negatively affected by this outward external situation that I had no control over.
It's
And
faith.
you're-
It's faith in the structure. It's faith in God.
And that really
Yeah.
comes down to the idea of asking forgiveness from God, because you're not like, sorry God, I killed 3 people this week, and sorry God, help
You
you
forgive me? I'll see you soon, baby.
Because
Yeah.
it used to be like you sinned, you had to find a newborn lamb and murder it on an altar or something. Like that was before the idea of Jesus and being forgiven for your sins. That's kind of what the Jews believed, that you had to sacrifice. You had to sacrifice to make up for your sins. And I don't necessarily believe that either, but it's almost a metaphorical sacrifice. I could see
It's a
But-
it's a self punishment.
but really,
I stole from this guy. I feel bad. I have to essentially slaughter
Right.
one of my things, which is going to set me back.
Right, so
but
that-
I'm
that's-
setting myself back because I set him back. I'm going to purposefully set myself back and even it out.
and that's the
Yeah.
pre-forgiveness mentality.
Yeah.
It's I have to make up for this. Forgiveness after Jesus, according to
Scripture.
everything consolidated, even in our modern world, forgiveness really means that you're not allowing yourself to be negatively affected by this, and you by forgiving somebody of what has been done unto you, you're really saying that you understand, you're okay with it. You don't want to let it continue to happen, but you're really forgiving yourself.
And
It is essentially what it comes down to. And
Yeah.
I'm just tying that into the idea of asking God for forgiveness. Is that God is not like calling up your buddy. It's a universal order. So like when you forgive yourself, things will start to align based on that mentality. Whereas if you forgive your buddy, maybe he'll apologize and buy you a beer next. That's a physical consequence of
Yeah.
oh, I forgive you. But when you forgive yourself, when you ask God for forgiveness, you basically are aligning the vibrations to bring you more prosperity in the future, because you have moved on from this. It's wrong, and you know why. You're not going to do it again.
You're not just going to avoid what is wrong, but you've learned from it. And now you have an understanding of why it's wrong. So you can follow Scripture and say, this is wrong, I'll never do it. But in a bad situation, you do it. You see how it affects other people. You ask for forgiveness because you understand, I needed to do this, but now I see that I never needed to because I hurt other people. I should have found another way. Even though I thought that was my only one, I've seen what it's done. So I would kind of go into that too and say, there is kind of, in my opinion, that universal order. There is the structure for the moral standard, which would be God's moral standard, because humans' moral standard fluctuates on person to person, from experience to experience. Like I said, a guy in Vietnam is going to probably have a different understanding of what is morality versus, some kid who was, raised in like a really rich household and never really had any struggles in his life, never dealt with anything bad, and became a gender studies, student. It's like I'm not saying one's better than the other by any means. I'm saying both people are going to have different standards for morals, for what is right and wrong. Maybe they have very similar understandings, but they're going to be tweaked. While if you look at something like religion, it's like no exceptions, no gray areas. This is what it is. So I would go off of that and say that the idea of God is God in my opinion, God created all of us to intercede into all of us, to separate himself from what is infinite. He's like, I don't end. I've never began. I won't end. I am always me. So I created this reality to intercede, to break up the monotony of time and live vicariously through you guys. But I give you free will because if I didn't, I'd be right back in the same boat. I'd be literally in this.
In a way, it's separating
himself from himself.
The consciousness is budding off, and he's allowing that bud to do what it does.
Exactly. And as a perfect equation, he has also given us a perfect set of morals to live by. Now, he gives us free will, whether we decide to go by those morals or not. But with that free will, we have to look at things and say, if I'm going to follow this as a perfect structure, I have to do it. If I mislead a little bit and I notice what it's doing wrong, I have to ask for forgiveness. Otherwise, I just kind of accept the fact that I did that. I'm a person who did that. And now I'm a person who did this. I'm a person who did that. And the more little things you do, you get to a point where you don't realize as it happens, but you recreate your identity as somebody, I'm a perfect person who slipped up. You slip up a bunch more and you have all these tiny slip-ups, nothing major, but a bunch of tiny slip-ups. Now you're the guy who just makes mistakes here and there. Now you've opened yourself up because of your view of yourself as somebody who didn't make one mistake, but somebody who's made many. That changes how you view yourself. So it's the same idea as the guy who's stealing the bread from the guy making the bread. The guy making the bread can either understand, I have a moral structure to follow. So does he, but he's stealing from me. I'm not going to question why he's stealing from me. I'm not going to question his moral structure. I'm going to apply my moral structure to him, which means, hey, I'm going to confront you. I'm going to wait. Instead of waiting 5 days and noticing on the 5th day he stole, getting mad and saying, that's it, I'm going to kill him. I know you need food. I've let you get it. Then I let you get it. Then you got greedy. Now I can't take this anymore. I'm going to wait out and shoot you. Instead, he goes, he sees the guy come through. He sees him coming through again. Instead of letting him keep coming through and leaving that door unlocked until he says, you're taking advantage of me. Instead, he waits by the door. The guy comes, he says, hey, don't be scared. Don't run away. You're hungry. The guy says, he only addresses the morality. Yeah. And as a moral person, you're hungry and I need to help because I can see you don't believe there's any other way. Now, my goal is to lead you back. My goal is to lead you back to your moral path. You're stealing from me. Let's acknowledge that. You're hungry. Yes, I am. Okay, I noticed you've been coming by. You've been taking stuff for a while. Maybe the guy starts crying because in that moment, he didn't expect to actually confront what he was doing. Maybe he never would have. But because I was there, he was like, oh, this is the person I'm stealing from. If I show him grace and I'm like, hey, I noticed you've been stealing from, you've been grabbing this food. You're hungry. The guy says, yes, I'm starving. My whole family's hungry. I noticed you've done this a few times. You probably had no idea I've been stealing for a month. But that I called it out, you're like, you start crying. Yes, I'm sorry. My family is starving. I've been doing this. Well, hey, would you like to work at my shop with me and help me? With this extra help, I can pay you in food. You'll never go hungry again. But with this extra help, I can also make more food. So this is a win-win.
Right.
This is a way for me to morally reconcile your sins.
Right.
That's
forgiveness.
That's forgiveness. Or I just react off of what you're doing. I say, I'm a morally perfect person. I've done nothing wrong, and this person just keeps stealing.
Like you have to work for me to pay off the bread that you stole.
And the moment I shoot you because you keep stealing is the moment I have gone into the gray, dark area.
Yeah.
And that's really what I believe the idea of religion is about, is saying, hey, we're all in this together. We all have to abide by what is the moral structure. And if you don't agree with that moral structure, then you agree with your moral structure. You've created your own gray areas that you believe are not gray. This is all okay. And the only argument I would give to that is people who typically do that don't like when the same stuff is done to them.
Right.
And that's the issue, is this is okay to do, but don't do it to me. Well, then how can you justify that it's right to do? Well, because I'm a different person than you. What? Okay, like we're different, but like I'm telling you, I don't like it when you do it to me either.
So
just because I let it happen doesn't mean what you're doing is okay. When I do it to you and you call me out, just because you call me out doesn't mean that I'm not hurt when you do it to me because I don't call you out. I'm just sitting here in silence, like, what is this guy doing? He's taking my bread, dude. Like, hey, what are you doing? You know, go on. I'm sorry, but
No, I mean that kind of comes into the whole idea of this episode, and it's not to tell you that you have to be religious or whatever. I mean, you might be questioning that or figuring it out for yourself. I think it's more important to find it for yourself than it is to be told. Because even as a child, I was raised my mom was very Christian and we went to church and stuff like that. It didn't mean anything to me. And similar to you, I mean, we can get into our backstories, if you want.
We'll have
but
a whole episode on that.
I rejected it for a while after that, and then I found a spirituality again that wasn't necessarily a uniform religion spirituality, but the spirituality that I found, I realized was, mostly what that uniform religion was telling me all along.
The funny thing is we both came around back to this on the same thing.
Yeah.
Like, I was raised Catholic, and a lot of it didn't make sense in terms of a perfect equation. Like, God's in you. But instead of asking God for forgiveness, instead of reconciling your sins within yourself and saying, God, I don't know how I can handle what I've done. Now that I can acknowledge that this is not who I am, but I've done it. Now that I can acknowledge this, how do I get rid of the feeling? The idea is forgiveness. So Christianity says, or in a lot of religions say Christianity says you ask God for forgiveness, and you feel that, and you specifically ask, I want forgiveness on this feeling right here that I have let grow too much. Catholicism says, well, just go to the guy, tell him whether you acknowledge how bad it was. Part of you knows it's bad, so just tell the priest in the little box, and then he'll tell you to say the same prayer about 9 times in a row.
Yeah,
and then after
20 times.
And then after you do that, you'll realize, like, oh, I feel better, and I don't feel bad that I did that anymore because I got into this repetitive, conversation with myself.
Do the sin, say the shit, and I'm good.
But that's what's funny is we both kind of came to the same conclusion that it's like, this idea doesn't really offer. You're saying he's in me, but I can't ask for forgiveness. I got to go through here. All this stuff doesn't make sense. I fell off, became atheist, and just like you, came back into spirituality, not through a religion, but with the idea of energy, the idea of emotion, the idea if I feel this way and this happens, I feel that way. But if I feel this way and I do the same thing to somebody else, they feel that way. So there's a structure to how emotions translate like math, where if I do this,
yes,
there's
a structure in a math. Yes. Okay, so that's kind of what I was getting to. I didn't seek out a spiritual answer for this.
It's just funny how many of us go through the exact same patterns.
I think that's what it really takes is finding it for yourself and kind of almost like living the experience. Like maybe it almost takes a hardcore sinner to be to flip that 180 and really kind of take things the other direction. But I'm not necessarily talking about that for you guys out there. All I was trying to say is that it aligned with the things that I had heard since a child, and I kind of circled back to it. And it's almost like, there's this razor's edge of contemplation of our actions and the butterfly effect of them, or the consequences of our actions, and that kind of that. Well, let me explain it this way. It's almost like the idea of karma. So I realized that the idea of karma could be conceived from 2 different ways. On one way, the things that you do are going to be directly put back to you. So if you're mean to people, they're going to be mean back. I mean, that makes sense from a realistic, rational perspective. It's in the immediate sphere. If I'm a mean person, or if I'm having a bad day, I'm frowning, like, people are going to react negatively towards me because of what I'm putting off. And then there's a spiritual side to that. And it's almost like, I think that's why some people struggle with the idea of just fully believing in a religion that they've been told, like, without finding it for yourself, is because you're like, well, you know, like, I understand this idea of karma. If I'm do bad things, then bad things happen to me. Oh yeah. But it's really, it goes deeper than that. It's more of an
understanding.
It's really like, you don't know what the consequences of your own mentality will do for you, you know, a year from now. So like, one situation, one interaction can affect your life negatively or positively, you know, indefinitely, without you being able to know. Like, the things we do every moment do affect our lives, whether maybe it just affects it for the next day, but like the mentality especially, that's the key. It's the mentality behind your actions. And you know, that's why it's important to have a morality behind this, and that's what religion talks about. And at the time I was trying to figure all this out, I'm like, well, you know, I could do something good today and tomorrow, and I could be a good person, but then the bad things I do, they still result in negative outcomes. Whether that's a direct influence, like a karmatic type of,
ask
like,
for forgiveness,
you know,
but
the
you
person
need to
that I told off
actually-
last week
Yeah.
is going to come back this week and
Yeah, it's like,
fuck
if
me
you're
up
going
or
to
something.
ask for forgiveness, you have to actually feel like you need to be forgiven.
Right.
If you sit there and you're like, I did something bad, I know it's bad, I don't feel that bad for it, but I'm asking for forgiveness. You have to realize what you do is bad and say, God, I need you to forgive me. I need the forgiveness, because I cannot go on being a
Well,
put it out of the camera. But I can't go on being a good person unless I understand what I did was bad. If I'm going to ask for the forgiveness, I need to understand that I don't want to do that again because it was bad. And just to go off what you were saying, just a quick example, because what you're saying, I mean, that's what it is. If you got something, go ahead.
Well, no, I was gonna say, like, take religion out of it. I mean, this is kind of really just a way to conceptualize your actions and your internal, you know, mood or
Yeah. So
your
real
mentality.
quick,
So-
if I could just interject.
Well, just to quickly finish though, it's the future is up to your present moment. So when whether you're a spiritual person or not, when you do negative things or when you do positive things, those consequences, you are going to see them. Just as an example of the person stealing. At first, you're helping your family, you know, you're helping yourself, but it leads to more stealing. So it's like, these things aren't just action reaction or you know, give and take. This is painting a picture of your overall energy that you're putting out, and that you don't know what's going to happen with that. And that's why it's important to not only, like, I mean, I definitely suggest finding, you know, a religion or Christianity, something that speaks to you and that's something that you can follow. But if you really just think about it on a rational perspective, you know, our internal, what's going on through our minds influences how we act, and how we act is going to influence our future, you know, regardless of if you're good or bad. And it's hard to conceptualize that stuff. And for me, that's why I realized that the spirituality, the moral compass, wasn't just an idea. It wasn't just a karma idea. It was actually tied to the universal consciousness, which is the whole unfolding of order and chaos.
The big picture.
Or order is the 51%, chaos is the 49%. So when you lead towards the chaos, you start to unravel.
Yeah.
And that's physically, that's mentally, that's emotionally.
Yeah.
You lead to order, it's the opposite. You become
Yeah.
fulfilled, and then next thing you know, a year from now, instead of stealing food, you're selling food.
And a really good example to go off of what you were saying, as far as take religion out of it and just look at it the way it is. So a guy walking around, he's got plenty of money, he's doing great, and he's like, I'm just a good person. I have my own morals and my own things, but I know I don't do anything that hurts people. And so with his limited understanding and experience, this guy's walking around with his money, he's going downtown, he sees a guy, he's like, oh, I haven't eaten in like 7 days, like, can I please just have some money for food? Now that guy could say, you know what? Follow me. We're going down the street. I'm getting you food. We're going to go to this restaurant. I want you to eat good right now. And then after that, we're going to go to the grocery store. I'm going to get you some food. I'm going to get you set up for like a week. I'm going to get you a tent. And anytime you need money, here's my number. Or anytime you need food, here's my number. Call me. I'm going to help you. And I'm going to try to set you up with a job so we can get you out of the situation. Instead, that person, like you said, they want to just be a good person. Like a lot of people think, like, if I do something good, then I'm a good person, you know? So this guy sees the guy, he says, I haven't eaten in 7 days. I need some food. You know, do you have any money for food? And the guy goes, I'm such a good person. Here's $100. Because in their head, they're like, this poor motherfucker, he has $100 is like $1 million. It's all negative. It's all negative because the reason you're giving him 100 is to say, you know what? I can afford it. Also, not to flex on the broke man, but sorry, brokey boy, but here's $100. This just made your whole week. And now you're going to look at me as basically your savior. Yeah, he died that night from a heroin overdose because you gave him too much money and he's addicted to drugs. Instead of believing, that's the idea of understanding, is saying, that's the spiritual aspect, is saying, I understand that I am flawed and I understand others are flawed. With my moral understanding I have through God, the spiritual aspect is I know that even though you're coming to me and you are asking for money for food, I will respond with, I will feed you. I will not respond with, I will give you money, because I will not be responsible for your death. So the person who thinks, well, I gave him $100. I'm a good person. I gave a homeless guy $100. And all the friends are like, whoa, dude, what a great guy.
Yeah.
Nobody acknowledges the butterfly effect of that guy died from a drug overdose, because instead of understanding the situation and saying, clearly this guy's an addict, I can see track marks, I see the issues, but he says he's hungry and needs money. Well, why would he lie to me? He needs money for food. Here's the simple thing. The basic thing is your morality should say, if I myself, the universal morality, if I myself was that hungry, I would beg somebody for food. I wouldn't ask for money for food. I wouldn't ask for money at all. I would beg for food.
All right.
So when somebody says, I need money for food, it's been so long, please, that stupid person who's like, I'm a good guy, gives them money, and that person dies because of that $100 bill he gave them. They're dead. So would you say, I know it's a stretch, but would you say that the person who gave him that money killed him? Definitely enabled his death.
Yeah.
You may not have gotten the kill, but you got the assist. You
Right.
know?
And that's the disconnect between the karma idea, which is very external. You know, do good things, things.
But I
will
think it's
happen
the
to
same
you.
idea.
It's
Is that person who gave that money, not because they wanted to actually get that person fed, but because they wanted to be like, here's the money, get out of my hair. No, a good person with real morality says, I see you're hungry. I'm probably the 200th person today you've asked. If you really need food, follow me. I will bring you to food.
Yeah.
I will get you food. But if I don't want to deal with your shit, here's some money, go get your own food. I'm a good person. And then that person dies. The reality is the people that we all know who do that type of behavior where it's like, oh, I gave this guy some money one time, this and that. They almost brag because they want to emphasize, like, I didn't give that money because I'm a good person. I gave that money because I'm the shit. Do you agree? Hey, I gave that guy money. Can I get a reaction? Yeah, I was at the bus stop yesterday. Some dude walked up. I gave him $20. Like, $20? I had it, you know. It's what is this doing to you? Versus what would you have done with that $20 if you would have taken that person somewhere and said, you know what? I'm going to get you a couple burgers from this place. You're going to be fed for today. And then we're going to go over here. I'll get you some shoes if you need some shoes. $15 beat arounds. And And that's kind of the idea, I believe, is what is that moral understanding of kind of that butterfly effect of you might not notice what happens. You may not know what the end result is. You may not know that guy died, but you may keep giving money. And I believe that that's the long-term karmatic backlash where it's like you've been given 5, 10, 20 bucks here and there to all these homeless people for years. 5 years later, you see on the news that one of the homeless guys that you gave money to died from a severe drug overdose. And you realize he died. It's on the news. You realize he died, and you're like, 7 hours ago? That's the guy I gave money to.
Yeah.
And you're like, was that my money that did that? Now you have to accept. And now your brain is realizing it's been 5 years. And I just happened to see the TV on and see this guy, this homeless dude on here died from a very public drug overdose that made the news. It was so public. So after 5 years, is he the only person I've helped kill? That's where all of a sudden these things you think you're doing are good start to catch up with you. That's why it's about that's why I say it's about the true godly morality, because it's not just about this guy's hungry. It's about morality and saying, I see this guy's hungry. I understand I'm probably the 250th guy he's asked today for money for food. But if he's actually hungry and nobody's feeding him, I'll be the guy to feed him. I have no problem with that. I'll have him follow me. We can talk on the way. I'll get to know this person. I will feed them. I'll create a relationship and show him I'm not just going to throw money at you. I want to get to know you. I want to help you. My name's blah, blah, blah. What's your name? It's the morality. It's not just putting yourself in their shoes, but it's simply looking past the situation of, if I give this guy money, I don't know what it's going to go to. But I do know that if I give this guy food, he will be fed. Yeah. And if I get to know this guy and talk to him, I might be able to help him. This conversation and this showing of love, this I want to get to know you. I want to go. I'm not just going to get you a burger. We're going to sit down in a restaurant. We're going to have, I might buy us a couple beers, and we're going to sit there. We're going to eat good, and we're going to. That's what I'm saying. We're going to eat good, and we're going to have conversations while we eat. I'm going to get to know you, and by the end of it, you're going to feel like you have a friend. You're not going to feel alone anymore. And hopefully that is enough for you to work a little harder on yourself and try to get out of the situation and get to where you want to be in life.
Yeah.
Or I can throw 20 bucks at you and you'll die from a heroin overdose. Who's the better guy?
So anyone out there watching, I see you in there. I see your eyeballs.
We see you seeing us.
Give us a call, man. Let's talk about it. Let me know what you guys think, even in the chat. Even if you just want, if you're too shy, you don't feel like calling. Totally anonymous, by the way. We also are doing a subscriber giveaway. If you do subscribe to the channel, send us an email to parodyworldproductions@gmail.com with a screenshot of your subscription, and we'll send you a $5 Amazon gift card. I see you out there. But yeah, I mean, to get back to the discussion here, you know, I feel like a lot of people.
Real quick, I want to emphasize that number is free money.
It's free money.
I want to emphasize you don't even have to call the number to get the money. I just, you could call just to talk and have some fun. You could jump in the chat just to persuade the conversation with your own ideas.
You could subscribe. You could just Google subscription thumbs up or bell or whatever, and then send us the image. We're not going to know.
We're not going to put that much thought into it. We're asking for you to subscribe, give us a like, and just send us a screenshot of that, and we're going to give you money. I'm just really emphasizing. I really hate this YouTube algorithm.
I know, and we've been doing this podcast for 3 years now. It's got to be 3 years.
We had a good following until we got on YouTube, and then I swear to God, the algorithm has pooched us.
Yeah.
To a point where,
well, we're low on subscribers, so people they're not promoting our videos. Anyway, long story short, we have good stuff to say. We've refined the podcast over the years. Everything is very professional now at this point, and we would love to hear your perspective. Because Meta Perspective Podcast isn't meta without your perspective.
Ding. And
but yeah.
I love that about it. That's the only reason I keep getting worked up about it is I miss those times where we'd have these deep conversations.
Yes.
Someone would jump in with a gem, and you're like, "That's a good idea." Neither of us think like that guy. Let's
Yeah.
talk about that.
We had
let's,
so
let's
many-
expand on it.
We were
I
on
love
Twitch.
that,
We had
man.
so many people in the Twitch chat. We had at least one comment an episode. Sometimes we'd have like 5-6 people
Sometimes it would just go
consistently.
on and on.
Yeah, and the whole episode was based around the comments.
We'd
And-
go an extra hour into the conversation just to keep up with the
Yeah.
responses. And it's like, these are good. These aren't just responding to people. This is, hey, I'm into this conversation.
Yeah.
This guy's making some good points. And even if it's a bad point, that's the whole point of it. We're not going to judge you. We just want to talk. We want to expand on the idea. If you see it in a way that we disagree, either we're going to change your mind or you're going to change ours. The point is change. The point is getting down to it. All of us kind of coming together. We're all experiencing the human experience, maybe in different ways, but there's one thing that we cannot argue is true with everybody, and that is we're all experiencing this reality.
Yeah. I mean
So let's talk about it.
it's such a beautiful thing, honestly.
gorgeous.
We are a
So
collection of atoms that are assembled into molecules, assembled into cells, assembled into organs, assembled into a person, an organism,
Which somehow has
assembled into society.
which somehow is assembled into a consciousness that can assemble or disassemble reality, where you can either understand and put everything together or you can fall apart and lose everything. We have the decision on how these things are assembled.
Yeah.
That in itself is crazy. It assembled and then got to decide on its assembly.
and that's
nuts.
That's where this razor's edge comes. This is like, one side is atheism, one side is religion. It's do you believe that all of this stuff was assimilated for by a creator, by a reason, or was it totally random and nothing can exist, nothing that doesn't work can't exist? Either way, it's a special thing. So you have to kind of consider both sides. As well, there's no proof that that this is a higher power creating this, but at the same time, does it really matter? And if God really wasn't a thing and didn't speak to people and put these ideas and this morality that we're talking about, didn't put that down into legible form for people to pass on and read about for thousands of years, does it really matter at the end of the day? Like, are these things, is this morality good or bad? And the answer is that it's good, and you might as well. If it's the difference between believing in nothing and believing in something, and the outcome is not different, why wouldn't you believe in something? I mean, quantum physics has told us that manifestation and observation influences the material universe, influences the future. So if you don't believe in the afterlife, how do you expect to manifest an afterlife? You're just going to disappear. Well, that's not any fun to believe. No one wants to believe that there's nothing after death. That makes life ever so fleeting. I mean, it
makes it pointless.
Yeah, it means that everything
do I just
you
sit here and do
it's-
what's the point of morality if I die and nothing happens? I'm going to do whatever the hell I want.
Right, exactly. And what we've talked about in this episode and what we want to get across is that if you do whatever you want, you're going to have a bad life. Whether you believe that it's going to influence your afterlife or not, it doesn't matter. Your current life, the one that you're in now, if you reject these ideas, you're going to have the consequences. They are going to affect you, whether it's, even if it's like you said, sin, self-inflicted negativity. Even if, obviously we're drinking right now.
Yeah, cheers.
That's okay. Jesus turned water into wine. But if you do drugs or something, if you're really into, something that's destructive, that might be bringing you joy and stuff like that, but it's tearing down your life. There are consequences of that, and you are going to see them later. You might not understand them all. If you understood them all, you might not do it. And that's kind of where everyone finds themselves.
If you understood it all, you would never sin. The reality is we are imperfect, and the idea is to follow some type of moral structure where even as a Christian you may sin, but the goal is to understand, oh, I slipped up here. I see how this is wrong. I ask for forgiveness and I feel bad for it, and now in my heart I will never make that mistake again. The same as like touching when you're a kid and you touch a stove, and obviously you shouldn't touch a hot burning stove. You know there's fire, but you don't know what fire means. So you walk up and you touch the stove and you go, ow, it burnt me. You'll never do that again because it hurts.
Yeah.
And it's the same idea as we can be like, but you're Christian. How could you do something that exercises greed? Well, maybe that kid didn't know what greed was. And when he became greedy and he saw the results of greed, he realized this is wrong. I don't want to go back into this type of person. And I just want to finish kind of my point with saying that I believe that's why there is kind of a type of resurgence of especially Christianity, but in religion as a whole. And I believe the reason that for this resurgence of everybody kind of going back and re-looking into all this stuff, it's getting a spike. You can Google it. I mean, or whatever isn't censored. You can look it up. There is a spike in this moral belief system that we haven't seen in at least like 20 years. Well, but the thing is within these past 20 years, as a whole, at least, and I'm speaking at least for America, but in these past 20 years, there's been a lot of just party, live your life, YOLO, do your own thing. It's all about you, focus on you. Even the Bible's like, hey, if you focus on you, like that's one of the worst things you can do. It's like you won't get into heaven. The Bible says, you go to God and you're like, yeah, I spoke for you. I did all this stuff. I created a church. I did all this in your name. He's like, no, you didn't. I never knew you. It's like, yeah, you never had a relationship with me. You just told all these people and did all this stuff. You wore $2,000 suits. You ended up driving a freaking Bentley. Like, yeah, you're the pastor of a church for me, but the reflection of what people saw did not lead people to me. It led them away. You were about yourself, not me. That's the message. No matter, regardless of how you want to interpret that as an atheist, Christian, or any other religion, the simple fact of the matter is you have to let yourself go and try to help other people with the understanding that you yourself would want help regardless of whether or not people knew who you were or didn't know who you were. You want to be treated as somebody who's going through something. If you see me hurt, it shouldn't be, well, he's hurt because he did that. And everybody's like, oh, well, we don't want to help him now. There should be one person in the group who's like, I know he's a terrible person, but I want to help him. And I'm not going to help him by giving him money. I'm going to help him by leading him back. And that's kind of what I wanted to, what my point was what a lot of this comes down to, what a lot of this resurgence comes down to is people believing it's okay to just follow your own morality. And that's why I think a lot of religion in this topic itself has spiked up, and you see it in YouTube, you see it on these shorts, you see it on all these places. It's becoming more popular. And I believe the reason is because for the first time in a while, I'm sure it's happened over and over and over, repetitive cycle, but for the first time in at least a while in American history, people have kind of like really pushed away religion. Like it's been going on for probably God knows how long, like at least like 30, 40 years where America's been like, and kind of leaned away.
Yeah.
But it's at least the past 20 that's been fixed in to be like, all right, religion's an old school thing. It's all about new technology, this new world. We don't need that old stuff. YOLO, do you, baby. Go get the bag, queen. And then people start doing that stuff and people realize, and that's why I say, it's going off what you said earlier about how a sinner, it sometimes it takes somebody who sins so much to go back to God, because and just like the Bible, dude was like, hey, I've been perfect, and this dude went out and sinned and did all this stuff, came back and said he found God, and we're all celebrating him. Why aren't we celebrating me? I never got misled. I was never astray. And everybody's like, it's the fact that he came back. We're celebrating that he came back because we lost him. Yes, you're doing everything right, but we don't celebrate that you're doing things right because your life is good. You might look at it as he got to sin. He got to do all these things that he wanted to do, and I didn't. Well, that's the problem.
It's
is
jealousy.
Exactly. He might have done
envy.
those things, but because he did them all, he now understands why it's wrong. He's not coming back to you because he's like, I'm tired of fucking bitches and drinking and getting wasted. No, he's like, the lifestyle I lived hurt me so much. And I saw how it hurt other people I was with so much that I'm coming back. I'm asking for forgiveness. I want to push what I went through out of my life so bad that I'm asking for forgiveness and I'm coming back to you. And they celebrated with open arms saying, we're not judging you for this. We're only happy that you're coming back. The only person who wasn't happy was his brother, who's like, yo, I never fucked up like he did. Why are we not punishing him? Because I feel like if I messed up, you'd punish me. Well, you're with us. If you do something bad, we'll tell you it's bad. But he left. He did his own thing. We're celebrating him coming back. We will never celebrate what he did, but we'll celebrate that he understands that his decisions taught him something. You may not have ever sinned in the ways he has, but clearly you haven't learned anything because you're mad and you're jealous because he got to do what he did and is still forgiven. If you want to go run away and mess up your life and hurt yourself, you can. But clearly we're celebrating and he's coming back because that's wrong and it hurts you. And that's kind of the idea is all of these sins, telling the world, in America at least, with the entertainment and all this stuff of saying, just, do whatever you want. I was born this way. Just live your life however you want to live and F everything else. That's why I think it's a resurgence, is people have been doing that. People have been listening to this new way of life because they don't see a reflection of religion. We all just see entertainment. And entertainment says, just go have fun. And when you do it, you hurt yourself. And that's why I think people are bouncing back because they're like, hey, I'm figuring out there's order. There's consequence in my actions. This stuff isn't just random. I can't just go out and do what I want. And I don't see the effects of that.
Right. It's right. It's not about don't do what you want. I mean, no one's like telling you like
properly.
Oh, you can't do that because you want to. That's against God.
You can have sex. There's just a right way and a right perspective and a right mentality.
Right.
It's the same as anything. You can overeat, but there's a moment in a situation. There's things to celebrate. You don't just overeat every night because you can.
Right.
You don't just overdo this, overdrink. You don't overabundance anything as a perfect person under the moral structure. Not saying we're perfect, but the idea being that, yes,
that's the thing. We're not perfect, and you don't have to be perfect to have the right path in front of you. And that's kind of like one of the things that perplexes me now about where our societal understanding of morality and guidance is going, and like, obviously the founding fathers like wrote in the word God to the Constitution and the Pledge of Allegiance and all that. They were godly people and they understood the things that we're talking about. And that was when the world was real.
When most people kind of
if you
just,
wrong
that
somebody,
was common sense.
If you wrong someone, they would, break your arm or something, and that might not be able to be fixed by a surgeon. You
stole from me.
You might have
I break
a limp.
your fingers. Now you can't steal. It's
Like you literally, there's no doctors like you. I mean, there are doctors, but there's no surgeons like that. You break your leg, someone breaks your leg because you wronged them. Yeah, you're gonna walk with a limp and a cane for the rest of your life.
Yeah.
These things had real world consequences. Where now we're dealing with more of a less tangible, latent consequences, and that manifests itself in mental health. And everyone's mental health crisis. Why has it gotten worse over the last 10 years when all of these things, all the societal implicators are saying that our lives are better? We have more health care and more medicines and all this stuff. Like everything should be better. But it's hit a decline. And that's kind of like one of the things that perplexes me is if you're contemplating whether God exists or not. On one side it doesn't. He or whatever, it God doesn't exist and everything is meaningless. It's nihilism. It's kind of a, this is all random occurrence, and just by, happenstance, everything has assembled to where, atoms and cells that change throughout your entire life, by the way, somehow sustain a conscious existence.
How long is it before you
Yeah.
essentially have a new body?
Yeah, it's like
Every
depends on
2
the
years
cells,
or
but
2
like,
months? I know it was 2 something.
yeah, like your cells are changing all the time.
Yeah, but
All
it's something like every 2 years or something. Your body's essentially a new
Yeah,
body.
except for maybe like your deep neurons that, like hold those connections. Like everything in your body has changed over the last year. And like you're not the same physical being. So
You literally have a new body.
yeah,
Literally.
our consciousness is being sustained. And so like you can go to the one side and say, God doesn't exist. It's all random. It's all perfect harmony, randomized. Which is okay. I mean, you can see that. I've seen that side of things. And what I'm left with is there's not much meaning to seeing things that way. And human beings love to recognize patterns and things like that. So I started to kind of recognize some of these patterns. And like through my almost like atheism, agnosticness, got really into science. I'm an engineer. Like I know a lot about the physical universe. And I had an experience where I was like, okay, I need to figure out how everything works. Why does it work? So like I was driven by that. And I was more on that side of, okay, it's all meaningless. So like, let's try to find the meaning. Well, when you try to find the meaning, things start to relate to each other. Concepts start to transcend, yourself, the physical world, cells, atoms, nature, and you start to see an overarching order to everything. And that's an undeniable thing. It's really like, what are you talking about? The body, or the environment, or the plant, the solar system, the universe? There is an order that is progressing. It's not, that's the whole order and chaos thing. Order 51%, chaos 49%. You start with the Big Bang, total order, 100% order. Bam, 100% chaos. Then the order starts to form. So there's a progression in this order. So on one side, you could believe everything is meaningless, everything is nothing, we're all just a random happenstance. But then you start to find the order, and when you think about the meaning behind it, in that context, if there is no meaning behind the order, then it doesn't make sense. It simply doesn't.
Yeah.
Why would this order progress if it's all random? Why wouldn't it just fall apart? And why hasn't it fallen apart over the last 100 billion years, or 6 billion years on this earth? Why isn't the order devolved? Well, the idea is that we are progressing towards something. We are growing. The universal consciousness is excelling. And I believe we are a part of that. And when I realized that we are a part of that progression, that's what brought it all in for me. That's when the idea of random nothingness made less sense than the idea of some type of order pushing us towards an ultimate equilibrium or a goal. And that is what, that parallel between that idea and the idea of religion and what the Bible talks about. I mean, even what other religions talk about, even fucking Zeus, it's like all these people, they had meaning. They had the idea of gods and morality and all this. It was a progression. And when you realize that there aren't 2 gods, there aren't 3 gods, there aren't 10 gods, there's either one God or nothing, it's a lot better for your life, and it does a lot more for you if you believe that there is something outside of yourself.
Yeah.
You believe that order is heading towards some type of equilibrium. And that, even in science, you can find these ideas in science, and that is what what did it for me, and what made the spirituality that I thought I had shift towards a uniformity, not a uniform religion necessarily, but a uniformity of
Something to look into.
understanding.
Yes.
And that understanding has not left me, and it guides me, and it influences my actions, and like that concept and that idea, whether you find it in religion or what, however you find it, it's a very powerful thing, and it will change your life.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not saying that go be a Christian. I suggest that you do look into Christianity and read the Bible or read the Torah, read the Quran.
But to go off what you're saying,
ultimately find a belief, because
have a structure.
nothing is nothing.
Have a structure.
A belief is a direction.
And to quote a quite funny comedian, if you believe in nothing, which is atheism, and you die, where do you go? Well, it's nothing. You go nowhere.
Yeah.
So you die and you go back to your creator. You are nothing and you go back to nothing. The simple fact of the matter is there is structure. Even in things that don't make sense, it all points to something making sense. So one of the things I really want to emphasize too is if you look at history, the people who stand out the most, obvious example I've used more than I need to, Martin Luther King. Now, this man didn't do much. He didn't tell everybody what was right and what was wrong. He didn't tell people how to think. He simply said, this is what I want to see. And for whatever reason, everyone agreed. So if there's not a universal moral structure, how come when Martin Luther King came out with the famous speech saying, I have a dream. I want to see my kids playing with your kids. He didn't say, you should be able to let your stuff go so my kids could play with yours. That's an attack. He understood. I'm not going to attack. I'm going to come from a place of centered.
Yeah.
I just want to see my kids. I had a dream, and my dream was my kids were playing with yours. I'm not saying you're better. I'm not saying I'm better. I'm saying I simply had a dream that I saw my kids playing with yours in a time where it's not okay. And people are sitting there like, damn, like,
Yeah.
that's a pretty human thing to say. We can all agree on.
Can't disagree with that.
I would argue as far as the movement, as far as like segregation and racism and like kind of that tension, especially between like whites and blacks in America.
Yeah.
I would argue that Martin Luther King made a bigger psychological impact on slavery and or around the understanding of slavery and segregation.
Civil rights, yeah.
I would argue he made a bigger impact on that than Abraham Lincoln on anybody. Because plenty of, anybody can pass a bill. Anybody can say you have to do this. This isn't allowed. This is okay, blah, blah, blah. But he just walked out and said, hey, this is what I think. I just feel this way. And everybody was like, damn, we can't argue with those feelings. For some reason, we can't argue with those feelings. I feel what he's saying. And that's the difference. Martin Luther King was, regardless of the fact that he was with women and this and that, and you can try to demonize him as much as you want, but the simple fact of the matter is he was a man who tried to be good. He was a Christian man. He was a pastor, and he dedicated his life. The point of being Christian is to be Christ-like. Well, what did Christ do? He dedicated his life for people. And what happened to him? He was killed for it. Martin Luther King said, you know what? I'm going to stand up for what I know is wrong. I'm not going to tell people it's wrong. I'm just going to speak truth about what is right about it. And what's right is I should be able to let my kids play with yours. It's that simple. I should be able to do this. I want to be able to hang out with you. I want to. I know you don't like me, but I want to do this with you. I want my kids to be with your kids. I want us to get along. And that's all it is. I'm not telling you have to. I'm just saying that's what I want. And people gravitated to that. And what happened? It wasn't some crazy white guy who's like, shut this dude up and shot him. No, it was pretty obvious the FBI, the government, took him out because he was having a negative impact on what their goal was. So if the world is controlled by immorality, and our biggest, most powerful icons throughout history were all people who were moral, then you have to say, hey, which one works? If immorality has to kill people to maintain its structure, but morality only has to follow its inherent structure, which one's right? The one that just is naturally and feels that we all agree is right. If you need money and I give you $5, you're like, thanks. And then one day I need money and you're like, you know what? I'm going to give you $5 because you gave me $5. Great. But if somebody's saying, hey, you don't know this, but I've been taking $5 out of both of your accounts for this new streaming service you've been doing, and because you guys didn't know that you opted into this, it actually charged you an extra $5 a month because now you guys are getting HD or super HD with extra color. So you're like, okay, we're being moral. This guy's being immoral. If the world is immoral and the world is trying to control us, the only thing that we can do is be moral ourselves. When you see that, like, slavery and all that stuff was obviously, a lot of it, especially towards the end, was really being pushed and defended by the higher classes. A very small minority of people who were like, hey, we run a lot of stuff using people that we don't have to pay.
Yeah.
So the moral people were like, hey, that's wrong. Who killed Martin Luther King? The people who didn't want to have to pay people for labor and wanted to keep things the way they were.
Well, you're talking about Abraham Lincoln?
Martin Luther King. I might have slipped up. I'm talking about Martin Luther King.
Okay, yeah. It wasn't slavery. It was civil rights.
Yeah.
But
That's right. Yeah.
The point remains.
There's a lot there.
Sorry.
But the
I
point
didn't
being
mean to,
that
like,
it's morally
take away from
wrong.
what you're saying.
Like segregation and the tensions and everything were morally wrong. And he just spoke truth and said, hey, this is my morality. This is how I see things should be. I'm not telling you you're right or wrong. I'm just saying this is how I see it. And people are like, damn, the way he sees it sounds like the way I want to see things.
Yeah.
He almost sounds better than me, but not in a way that's boastful, but in a way that I empathize, and it makes me want to be better. And he ignited a fire under people and made people better. And that's the difference, is when you see a small class of people who are like, we don't want to lose kind of what we've had. We want to keep people segregated. We kind of want to get back to what we had. We want this. And then you have one guy speaking truth where people are saying, you know what? Let's just break these barriers down. Let's change everything. Let's just be a big melting pot. Let's all get along. And then he dies. Why? Why did Jesus die? Because he was leading people away from the government.
Yep.
Why did Martin Luther King die? He was leading people away from what the government was telling them.
Yeah,
Keep things segregated. Keep doing this. He led people away.
Nelson Mandela.
Oh,
The story is very similar.
Yeah.
It's all
of them are,
walks
because
of
what is the
life.
point of being Christ-like and following it? You're going to give your life. You're going to be killed because you're going to make a difference. And there's no question that Martin Luther King made a major difference.
Yeah.
And all of these people made a major difference. That's why everybody knows their name. You could have never researched this guy in your life, but we've all been forced to hear the name.
Yeah, you all have a street in your town named after Martin Luther King.
Exactly. Like he made that big of an impact where he's virtually everywhere. And all he did, the only thing he didn't go out and create a new invention. He didn't really do anything other than just speak from the heart. But it wasn't just speaking from the heart. It was speaking from a clean, morally perfect sounding heart. I'm not saying he was morally perfect, but what he said, you were like, this sounds really good. It's really well worded. I can feel what he's saying. It's not just that he knows what to say. He means what he says. And that's what changes hearts. That's what makes people kind of go, maybe we should rethink how we view this stuff. And that is what gets you killed. Cheers to that.
Anyway, we want to head into the closings?
Yeah, I think
Closing statements?
over an hour and a half in, so
Yeah,
feel like
you
it's a
usually
good
try to
place to go.
sum up
Yeah.
ideas at the end of the episode, and this one's been, we touched a lot of different things. You and me to start off, I guess.
Yeah, go for it.
Yeah. So I guess to sum up what we're really trying to get at is that we're both spiritual people, and I don't want to be that person that like tells you to like you have to be Christian, all this. That's not the point. The point is that society has drifted from the idea of believing in a God. And if there is a God, it's one. It's not like 4 or 10 or whatever. There's no agnostics on Zeus anymore. So it's either the existence of a higher power, a universal consciousness, some type of order that is influencing or has maybe influenced it just from the beginning. It doesn't matter. If there's an order, it's a one thing. And if there's nothing, then it's all meaningless. And it's better for somebody to believe that there is an order, that everything that they do matters, that it goes somewhere. And it matters because it's going to influence your life. It's going to help your life. One, it's going to help the other people around you, which also helps your life. And it's going to open up doors that you didn't think were necessarily possible. And when you lead your life in a way that is directed by the belief that there's a higher power, that you're working towards something. I mean, that is the idea of spirituality. Like everyone out there, like it's seen The Secret, or that there's a mystical element to this that science can't explain. And the more that we learn about science, the more that we kind of realize that there's something else to it.
Yeah, like
something
that
we
feeling
can't-
in the back of our head, in the back of our heart, that little feeling is like, I feel like there's some like supernatural power in me, but I've been raised to believe that that's crazy.
Right.
And then the more science gets into that, like you said, it's like, this is a real thing.
Yeah, we are influencing the universe by
Yeah.
our mere thoughts. I mean, you might not be able to measure it with a meter, but like we're finding out more and more that we are able to measure these things. We are, our psychological vibrations and the energy that's created off of these things, it has an effect. Even earlier tonight, not on the episode, but we were talking about a plant. Like in one scenario, people yell at the plant. The other scenario, people like praise the plant or play Mozart or something.
Love
And like the plant that was yelled at does worse than the plant that was praised. That simple physical manifestation of this energy is an example. I mean, it's not a science, it's not measurable, but it will influence your life. It will improve your life. And we've been taught we've been taught to reject the idea of God or an existence of a higher power because it facilitates control. Really, I mean, at the end of the day, if God isn't the thing, then the government's the next best thing, and that's what people want you to believe. And at the end of the day, you really have to weigh what's better for yourself, what's better for your loved ones, and your sphere of reality and influence. And it's better to believe in something than nothing. And at the end of the day, if you believe in something versus believing in nothing, in one scenario, you die and nothing happens. The other scenario, you believe something, maybe the infinite universe of space and time, that vibration that you put out when you are existing on this earth, comes back and the equilibrium allows your consciousness to sustain. I mean, that's the best case scenario.
Yeah.
So you might as well believe in a God, and you might as well, surrender to the morality that religions and karma and all these things have been telling you, because if not, you're gonna live a life that's immoral. You're gonna be sad, lonely. Things aren't gonna work out for you as much, and you're not gonna know why. You're gonna have no understanding of why. At least if you entertain the idea of a higher power, you understand why your negative actions and emotions and thoughts bring negative consequences. It makes sense. It frames it in a way that you can comprehend. And my only hope is for everyone out there to find some meaning in this life outside of just the mundane, existence that we all find ourselves locked in a biological time clock. You might as well do something with that. You might as well do something good. Don't let yourself fall victim to chaos and become unraveled. Because you'll never assemble yourself again. That's all I have to say about that.
And it's well said. And I guess for my closing thing, somewhat similar, I guess, is, it's, to me, pretty apparent that there is structure. But for anybody who's looking for something, who doesn't feel like they have themselves together, and maybe they were hurt by religion and stuff like that, it's, before you even look into religion, look into yourself. Look into your actions. If you have a problem with morality, it's as simple as taking a step back and looking at what you've done and seeing the effects, and deciding whether or not that's kind of what you want to follow. Like you said with the plants thing, there's a whole nother aspect. You guys can look this up. There's not just the plants. There's also the water, where people were freezing the water and they were looking at it, and the cups that people screamed at in this experiment, they would have very sporadic kind of ice crystals. And very noticeably, just sporadic, kind of like what you see on like the window of your car, on a cold morning. You're like, it's just it looks like just shattered glass moving different directions.
Cloudy.
And then on the ones where they praised the glass, they loved the glass. Like, you're a beautiful glass of freaking water. Yeah. My goodness. Those glasses that froze, like, you are definitely half full, baby. Those glasses created perfect ice crystals, stars, designs. They were symmetrical. They had order. The idea being that there is something spiritual, something mathematical, something scientific behind the energy that you produce. And that energy and that stuff that you put out there makes a significant difference in the world and within yourself. So if you're somebody who constantly makes crappy ice crystals with your energy, over time, you're going to be that person who's just kind of a crappy person. Because you're like, I don't see a right and wrong. I don't see good or bad. I just am the way I am. Okay, and come back to me in 3 years. Let's see where you are. I had a friend, and he was kind of like that. He was like, everything just is what it is. We exist, we die. So this life is meant for us to just enjoy and do what we want. And he died from a heroin overdose after years of using. But it's not like he just jumped to that. It was just like his idea of living life led to this, which led to that, which led to this, which led to heroin at some point, overdosing and dying. And the reality is that the structure, in my opinion, the whole point of this moral structure is not just to help other people. It's to help yourself. That's the main thing, is to help you. How do I enjoy life without pushing the bar up so high that I have to drink, 20 beers in order to be happy. I have to do this drug to be happy. I have to go, smash a bunch of chicks to be happy.
Work 20 years and, yeah.
Yeah, it's this idea of happiness is outward. But when it comes to true structural morality if you live the life you want. But I believe we all come back to the same understanding, which is if I keep doing this stuff over and over and over, I will realize at some point that what I'm doing doesn't work, what I'm doing isn't making me happy. And as a result of what I'm doing, I have to do other things outside of myself to be happy. I have to drink to be happy. I have to smoke to be happy. I have to sleep around to be happy instead of just finding that inner happiness. And I mean, I think that speaks volumes just on what morality is as a whole. You know, it's like, what makes you happy? Is it just drawing and creating? Is it trying to solve problems and issues as like maybe a counselor or something? Like, is it something that you're pushing yourself to do because you feel some good return back? Or is it running away from yourself to have fun, to escape the fact that you're not doing anything moral that you can stand by? Because again, if you feel like you haven't done anything with your life, so you party, you drink, you have all these things that just make you feel like you're doing something, that all of these immoral things lead to more immoral things. If you drink all the time, let's say you're a good person, but like, you know, girls aren't interested in you. They don't care. So you start drinking. And then as you drink, you're like, well, girls are interested in me more when I'm, you know, more confident, don't really care, and I'm drunk. And I'm more entertaining. I'm fun. Everybody tells me I'm a fun drunk. That leads to more drinking. And it gets to the point where all the people who are attracted to you because of that are not good people. Those people change your moralities. It really depends on who you associate with, how you view yourself. If you feel like what you're doing is not fulfilling, figure out what fulfills you. At the very least, if you just start working on being a better person and working on yourself, that by itself will lead you to being more moral, because you'll have more respect for yourself. And I've noticed that a lot of people who are very articulate and have some type of profession that they've created, and they're like, I'm somebody to admire, not because I've told you to, but because I've worked so hard that you're all looking at me and admiring me. Those types of people who have built themselves up as like an empire, when people look at them, they don't say, you know what? I'm going to give in to things because I'm rich. And everybody says, if I'm rich, I can do whatever I want. So why am I not smashing every simple chick at a Starbucks? I got the money. They'll do it. Why aren't they doing that? Because in order to get that level of success and that level of respect from everybody, they had to be a certain level of moral quality. And that's why that's why people like, what's his name? The Hollywood producer dude, fat, creepy, ugly dude who just everything about him was immoral.
Oh, Weinstein.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Weinstein. That's a great example of somebody, if you look at the way he looks, doesn't care about himself. Everything about him, if you go through the Bible and most religions, did not follow anything that would be good. This guy only followed what was bad. Why did you not really hear about him all that much? As big as he was, you heard about him, but you didn't hear about him all that much. It's because he didn't want people to know about him. He tried to hide himself. He's in the public eye. Everybody's looking at him, and he did everything he could to try to stay hidden. Simply because he was immoral and doing terrible things. While you have other people who were blowing up that everybody sees, and they're not trying to hide themselves. They're getting themselves out more because they're like, I'm proud of who I am. I'm proud of what I represent. And that, to me, that's the big difference. Are you going to be somebody that follows your own code, your own structure that hurts people, and you know it's wrong, so you just try to hide and just live your life in secrecy so you can just enjoy your own immoral fantasies or excitements or pleasures? Or are you going to be somebody who creates an empire who genuinely respects yourself and gains respect from others by what you've created? You know, your moral foundation that you follow determines the type of person you become. And again, we're not telling you to follow any specific religion or anything like that. We're just simply saying, follow something with some type of structure that leads to you being proud of yourself.
Find it for yourself.
Yeah, if you live a life that you're like, I just live and I do things for fun. How do you view yourself? How do you feel about yourself? Well, I feel kind of bad because I've made a lot of mistakes. Then stop. Don't feel bad about yourself. Choose to feel good. Ask for forgiveness. Restart. Be like, I know after doing all this stuff, I know it's wrong and I understand it. I have led myself astray. Nobody respects me. I'm the butt of every joke. So I'm going to rebrand myself. I'm going to change everything. I'm going to be somebody who not just respects themselves, but demands respect in how I talk and how I view things. But it takes work. It takes a lot of work.
It takes work.
Doesn't take work to be a POC, piece of crap, but it takes work to be good. So either you can just be a lazy bum who doesn't do anything and turns into crap, or you can be manure and make shit grow.
Well, either way, find it for yourself out there. Don't take our word for it. Look to the scriptures and Bibles and Torahs and Qurans or whatever you need to find the answers.
The rocks and the tablets.
Find the meaning in your life. Do something with it. Live morally. And we'll see you on the next week's episode.
Meta Perspective out.
Meta Perspective Podcast.